Earth strikes back. First contact gone wrong. The massive ships appeared without warning above Earth's major cities. Sleek vessels the size of Manhattan floating silently in the sky, casting shadows that plunged millions into darkness. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the International Space Station, watching through reinforced windows as humanity's first contact with alien life unfolded in the worst possible way. The transmission came in perfect English, broadcast simultaneously across every communication device on the planet. The voice was cold, mechanical, devoid of any warmth that humans associated with intelligent conversation. Primitive species of the third planet, you have been evaluated by the Galactic Council. Your civilization has been deemed unworthy of continued existence. You have 72 hours to surrender your planet's resources and prepare for relocation to designated labor colonies. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Chen felt her blood run cold. Around her, the international crew of the space station stared in stunned silence at the holographic displays showing the alien ships. Captain Yuki Tanaka from Japan was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. They're treating us like insects. Down on Earth, panic erupted in every major city. People fled their homes. Others gathered in churches and temples while governments scrambled to respond to an impossible situation. The alien ships made no aggressive moves, simply hovering like patient vultures waiting for carrion. President Elizabeth Morrison convened an emergency session with world leaders via secure channels. The Chinese premier, Russian president, and heads of the European Union all appeared on screens in the White House Situation Room. Their faces showed the same mixture of fear and disbelief. "Do we even have options here?" asked the German chancellor, his usually composed demeanor cracking under the weight of humanity's potential extinction. General Marcus Reynolds, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward grimly. "Our most advanced weapons are like throwing rocks at a fortress. These ships show technology centuries beyond ours." But Admiral Chen, listening from orbit, had noticed something the ground-based observers missed. During her years studying space phenomena, she had developed an eye for details others overlooked. The alien ships, despite their imposing size, showed signs of age. Scorch marks along their hulls, patched sections where different metals had been welded together, and most importantly, their positioning suggested they were not designed for atmospheric combat. She opened a private channel to General Reynolds. "Marcus, I need you to listen carefully. These ships aren't as invincible as they appear." Meanwhile, in underground bunkers across the globe, human ingenuity was already at work. Dr. James Harrison, a quantum physicist at CERN, was analyzing the energy signatures emanating from the alien vessels. His findings were disturbing yet hopeful. "Their shields operate on a quantum frequency we can potentially disrupt," he explained to his hastily assembled team. "But we'd need to coordinate a simultaneous strike from multiple points." The aliens had made their first mistake in giving humanity 72 hours. They had underestimated the species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and countless natural disasters. In bunkers, laboratories, and military installations worldwide, the brightest minds began working with desperate urgency. Colonel Maria Santos, leading a joint special forces unit, was already planning something audacious. "If their ships are designed for space combat, they might be vulnerable to ground-based assault," she told her team. "We need to get aboard one of those vessels." The plan that emerged was insane by any military standard. Using modified rocket technology, a small team would launch directly at the nearest mothership, breach its hull, and gather intelligence while planting explosives. It was a suicide mission that somehow felt like humanity's only chance. As the first day ended, the aliens sent another transmission. This time, the voice carried a hint of impatience. "Your silence indicates acceptance of your fate. Prepare for collection procedures to begin in 48 hours. What the aliens didn't realize was that Earth's silence wasn't submission. Every quiet moment was filled with frantic preparation. Factories that had been producing consumer goods were retooled overnight to manufacture weapons. Civilian engineers worked alongside military scientists to devise strategies against technology they barely understood. In Moscow, Dr. Alexei Volkov made a breakthrough in understanding the alien communication systems. "They're using quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across their fleet," he reported to the Global Defense Network. "If we can disrupt this, we can blind them." The second day brought unexpected developments. Smaller alien scout ships began descending toward major population centers, clearly beginning their collection procedures ahead of schedule. The time for preparation was ending faster than anyone had hoped. Chen made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for the aliens to act, humanity would strike first. She broadcast on all emergency channels to every world leader simultaneously. "This is Admiral Chen. Operation Defiance is now active. All units, all nations, every person capable of fighting. The time is now. We show these invaders that humanity doesn't surrender. We don't negotiate with our own extinction. Earth strikes back." The message spread across the planet in minutes. From hidden military installations to suburban garages where amateur engineers had been building improvised weapons, humanity began to move. The species that had crawled out of caves and reached for the stars was about to show the galaxy what desperation and ingenuity could accomplish. The Galactic Council had evaluated humanity based on their technology and peaceful nature. They had failed to account for the fury of a species fighting for its survival. As the first human weapons fired toward the alien ships, the greatest surprise in galactic history was about to unfold. In the depths of space, automated systems aboard the Galactic Council's command vessel detected the first human attacks. The readings were so unexpected that the ship's artificial intelligence ran diagnostics 3 times before accepting the data. The primitive species was actually fighting back. Earth strikes back. The impossible defense. The first human missiles struck the alien vessels at 14:32 GMT, and the results defied every prediction. Instead of harmlessly bouncing off advanced shields, the coordinated nuclear strike from 6 different nations created cascading failures across the lead ship's defensive systems. Dr. Harrison's quantum frequency calculations had been exactly right. Aboard the Galactic Council flagship Dominance, Commander Zek-9 experienced something no council member had felt in over 3 centuries. Genuine surprise. The primitive species had somehow disrupted their primary shields using crude atomic weapons configured in a pattern that shouldn't have been possible for a pre-spaceflight civilization. Impossible, Zek-9 clicked through his translation matrix. Run full scans on their technology level immediately. The answer that came back was even more disturbing. Humanity was indeed primitive by galactic standards, but their approach to problem-solving was unlike anything in the Council's vast databases. Where advanced species followed logical, predictable paths of technological development, humans seemed to thrive on improvisation and creative destruction. On Earth, the successful shield disruption sent waves of desperate hope through the global defense network. Admiral Chen coordinated the next phase from her orbital position, watching as Colonel Santos's suicide mission launched toward the damaged Council ship. "This is Spear Team," Santos radioed, as her modified spacecraft approached the alien vessel. "We're seeing massive hull breaches. Their armor is strong but brittle. Our conventional explosives are actually effective." The revelation changed everything. The aliens weren't invincible gods descended from the stars. They were an advanced, but stagnant civilization that had forgotten how to adapt to unexpected threats. Their technology was superior but inflexible, designed to overwhelm other advanced species that fought according to established galactic warfare protocols. Humanity fought dirty. In underground facilities across the planet, engineers were already modifying the next wave of attacks based on real-time intelligence from Santos's team. The aliens used energy-based weapons that were devastating against shielded targets, but surprisingly ineffective against Earth's atmosphere and primitive kinetic weapons. Dr. Yuki Sato in Tokyo made the next crucial discovery. "Their ships are controlled by a centralized AI network," she announced to the Global Command. "Each vessel has minimal crew, maybe a dozen entities managing automated systems. They're not warships, they're harvesting platforms." The Galactic Council had grown so accustomed to effortless conquest that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. Their ships were designed to intimidate and process compliant populations, not engage in actual combat with a species crazy enough to shoot back. General Reynolds implemented the new strategy immediately. "All units, target their communication arrays. We're not trying to destroy their ships, we're trying to isolate them from each other." The second wave of human attacks focused on the alien vessel's external sensor arrays and communication systems. Crude but effective explosive charges, delivered by everything from military drones to converted civilian aircraft, began systematically blinding the Council fleet. Zek-9 watched his tactical displays with growing alarm as ship after ship reported communication failures. The primitive species was using swarm tactics, overwhelming their defensive systems with sheer numbers of small, cheap weapons. It was a strategy so wasteful and illogical that no advanced civilization would consider it. Request immediate reinforcements from Sector Command, Zek-9 ordered his crew, but the Council's quantum communication array had been damaged in the first attack. The message would take weeks to reach their nearest fleet, transmitted through conventional space-time channels. For the first time in millennia, a Council harvesting operation was completely cut off from support. Colonel Santos's team had successfully breached the alien vessel and was transmitting incredible intelligence back to Earth. The ship's interior was a maze of automated systems tended by tall insectoid beings who seemed genuinely terrified by the human intrusion. "They're not warriors," Santos reported while her team secured the ship's data core. "They're bureaucrats. This entire invasion is being run like a corporate harvesting operation. They have protocols for compliant species, but nothing for active resistance." The psychological impact of this revelation rippled through Earth's defenses. The terrifying alien invaders were revealed as cosmic bullies who had never faced serious opposition. Humanity's desperate fury was something completely outside their experience. Dr. Volkov in Moscow cracked the alien data systems and discovered information that made everyone pause in astonishment. The Galactic Council controlled over 10,000 star systems, but they hadn't fought an actual war in over 800 years. Their military was essentially a police force designed to manage already conquered populations. "They're like colonial administrators," Volkov explained to the global leadership. "They show up, demand surrender, and process compliant civilizations. But they have no experience with species that refuse to be processed." As the third day began, the tactical situation had completely reversed. Half the alien fleet was operating with damaged communications, their harvesting schedules were in chaos, and human forces were actually boarding their vessels with increasing success. The breakthrough came when Dr. Harrison discovered that the aliens' quantum entanglement communication network could be not just disrupted, but hijacked. "We can send false orders to their ships," he announced excitedly. "Their own technology can be turned against them." President Morrison authorized the most audacious operation in human history. Using the captured alien communication codes, Earth's forces began transmitting fake orders that sent Council ships crashing into each other, directed them away from populated areas, and even convinced some vessels that the operation had been canceled. Zek-9's fleet was rapidly falling apart, and the primitive species hadn't even used their most advanced weapons yet. In desperation, he authorized the use of planetary bombardment protocols, a massive escalation that violated countless Council regulations, but seemed like the only way to salvage the situation. The bombardment order was intercepted by human intelligence and triggered the final phase of Operation Defiance. Every nuclear weapon on Earth that could be retrofitted for space delivery was launched simultaneously, not at the alien ships, but at carefully calculated points in Earth's upper atmosphere. The resulting electromagnetic pulses and radiation bursts created a chaotic storm that completely overwhelmed the aliens' sensitive quantum systems. Their ships, dependent on precise quantum calculations for everything from navigation to life support, began failing catastrophically. In the span of 6 hours, humanity had gone from facing extinction to watching alien vessels crash into oceans and deserts across the planet. The survivors of Zek-9's fleet retreated beyond Earth's orbit, their harvesting mission an unprecedented failure. But in the depths of space, automated beacons were already transmitting news of the disaster to the Galactic Council's core worlds. For the first time in 1,000 years, a primitive species had not only resisted Council authority, but had actually defeated a harvesting operation. The Council's response would be swift and merciless. The small harvesting fleet had failed, but the full might of galactic civilization was about to turn its attention toward the tiny blue planet that had dared to say no. Earth Strikes Back. Reverse engineering. Victory 3 weeks after the failed alien invasion, Earth had become a planet-sized research laboratory. Crashed council ships lay scattered across 6 continents, and every major nation had teams of scientists crawling through alien technology. Like children in the world's most dangerous candy store, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood inside the massive hull of a downed harvester ship in the Mojave Desert, her breath visible in the artificially cold air maintained by still-functioning alien life support systems. Around her, teams of engineers were carefully dismantling systems that represented technology centuries ahead of human understanding. "This is incredible," she whispered into her headset, speaking to the global research network that had formed overnight after the invasion. "Their power generation systems are based on contained micro-black holes. We're looking at unlimited clean energy." But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Tommy Chen, a 16-year-old computer prodigy from San Francisco and Admiral Chen's nephew, had been brought in when traditional cryptographers failed to crack the alien computer systems. His approach was typically human. Instead of trying to understand the sophisticated alien programming, he found ways to break it. "Their security is too good," Tommy explained to the gathered scientists via video link, "but their error handling is terrible. I can crash their systems and read the memory dumps. It's like breaking into a bank by making the security system so confused it forgets to lock the doors." The intelligence gathered from these digital break-ins was staggering. The Galactic Council wasn't just a government. It was a vast bureaucratic machine that had been running on autopilot for centuries. Their technology was incredibly advanced but also incredibly rigid. They had protocols for every situation except the one they now faced, a primitive species that refused to follow the rules. Colonel Santos, now leading the military analysis of captured alien equipment, made the discovery that would change everything. "Their weapons aren't just energy-based," she reported to the Joint Chiefs. "They're designed to work against specific types of shielding and armor used by Council species. But our materials, steel, concrete, even wood, react completely differently than they expected." This revelation led to Project Turnabout, the most ambitious military engineering effort in human history. Using captured alien technology as a foundation, human engineers began designing hybrid weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien science. The results were beyond anyone's expectations. Dr. Raj Patel in Mumbai successfully created the first human plasma rifle using alien energy cells and human focusing crystals. The weapon was cruder than its alien counterpart, but far more reliable and easier to manufacture. In Berlin, Dr. Schmidt's team reverse-engineered alien gravity manipulation technology and installed it in modified fighter jets. The hybrid aircraft could now operate effectively in space while maintaining the agility and unpredictability that made human pilots so effective. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unlikely collaboration between Dr. Harrison's quantum physics team and a group of amateur radio operators from around the world. Together, they discovered that alien quantum communication networks could be accessed and monitored using modified ham radio equipment. "We're listening to their emergency transmissions," Harrison announced during a global briefing. "The Council has declared a state of emergency. They're mobilizing their actual military forces, something they haven't done in 800 years. The intercepted communications revealed the true scope of humanity's victory. The failure at Earth had sent shockwaves through the galactic government. 3 council members had been executed for incompetence. Entire sectors were demanding protection from the virus species, and military commanders who had lived their entire careers without fighting a real war were suddenly being asked to deal with an enemy that didn't follow any known tactical patterns. President Morrison convened an emergency session with world leaders and the top scientists working on alien technology. The discussion was no longer about survival. It was about what humanity would do with its unexpected advantages. "They're coming back," General Reynolds stated flatly. "Our intelligence suggests a full military fleet within 6 months, but this time we'll be ready." The global response was unprecedented. Every nation contributed resources to Project Uplift, the crash program to upgrade human technology using alien science. Factories that had produced consumer electronics were now manufacturing quantum computers. Shipyards designed new spacecraft. The combined human engineering flexibility with alien power systems, Dr. Sato's team in Tokyo achieved something the aliens had thought impossible. They successfully modified alien AI systems to work with human neural patterns. The result was a new generation of combat computers that could adapt and improvise, like humans while processing information at alien speeds. The Council's mistake was treating us like every other species they've conquered, Dr. Sato explained. They assumed we would react predictably. But humans don't do predictable. The psychological warfare had already begun. Using the alien communication networks, Earth began broadcasting messages throughout Council space. The content was simple but devastating. Detailed tactical analyses of how a primitive species had defeated advanced alien technology, complete with video footage of Council ships being destroyed by human weapons. The effect on the galactic community was explosive. For the first time in a millennium, conquered species began to whisper about resistance. The Council's absolute authority was based on the myth of invincibility, and Earth had shattered that myth. Tommy Chen, now formally appointed as Earth's Director of Digital Warfare despite his age, had developed techniques for infiltrating Council networks and spreading disinformation. His crowning achievement was hacking into the Council's own historical archives and broadcasting their classified reports about previous primitive species they had exterminated. They've wiped out 47 civilizations just in the last 1,000 years, Tommy announced grimly. Species that might have become spacefaring if given time. The Council doesn't just conquer, they prevent competition. This revelation hardened humanity's resolve. The coming battle wasn't just about Earth's survival. It was about stopping a galactic-scale genocide that had been continuing for millennia. The weapon that would tip the scales came from an unexpected collaboration between Earth's top physicists and a team of science fiction writers. The writers had suggested weaponizing humanity's greatest strength, unpredictability. Dr. Harrison's team developed quantum uncertainty bombs, weapons that created regions of space where the fundamental laws of physics became unreliable. Alien technology dependent on precise quantum calculations simply stopped working in these zones. Human technology, built with tolerances for imperfection and unexpected failures, continued to function. We're not just fighting with better weapons, Admiral Chen observed as she watched test footage of alien systems failing catastrophically in uncertainty fields. We're fighting with better philosophy. They've optimized for perfection. We've optimized for survival. As the months passed, Earth transformed from a target into a fortress. The planet was surrounded by defense platforms built with hybrid technology, and the human fleet that had not existed 6 months earlier now numbered in the hundreds of vessels. But the greatest weapon humanity had developed wasn't technological at all. The intercepted Council communications showed growing panic as reports arrived from across the galaxy. Other species, inspired by Earth's example, were beginning to resist. The virus of rebellion was spreading faster than the Council could contain it. When the Council's revenge fleet finally appeared at the edge of the solar system, they found something unprecedented in galactic history. A primitive species that had become more dangerous in 6 months than most civilizations became in centuries. The real war was about to begin. Earth strikes back. The galaxy watches high. Admiral Thek Prime commanded the largest military fleet assembled by the Galactic Council in 8 centuries. 2,000 warships, each a masterpiece of technological superiority, approached the Sol system with the expectation of swift and final victory. The primitive species that had humiliated a harvesting operation would learn the true cost of defying galactic order. What Thek Prime didn't know was that his fleet's approach had been monitored by 47 different species across the galaxy. Earth's rebellion had inspired secret resistance networks that had been dormant for generations, and every conquered civilization was watching to see if the impossible could happen twice. On Kepler 442b, in a hidden underground facility, the remnants of the Threnody civilization huddled around illegal quantum receivers. The Threnody had been reduced to slavery 3 centuries ago, their proud warrior culture broken by Council technological superiority. Now their elder Ket warrior who remembers watched the human broadcast with growing amazement. "They fight like we once did," she whispered to her followers, "before we learned to fear the Council's power." Similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. The Crystalline Collective, the Void Swimmers, the Machine Prophets, species that had submitted to Council rule rather than face extinction, were suddenly paying attention to transmissions from a small blue planet in an obscure spiral arm. Admiral Chen floated in the command center of humanity's first true warship, the Defiance, watching the approaching Council fleet on displays that seamlessly blended human intuition with alien precision. Around her, the crew represented the best of both worlds, human creativity enhanced by alien technology. Fleet composition analysis complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Kim, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to both touch and thought. 2,000 ships, but they're configured for overwhelming primitive defenses, not engaging an equal opponent. The Council had made their second critical mistake. They still thought of humans as primitives who had gotten lucky, not as a genuine threat. Their fleet was designed to intimidate and destroy helpless civilizations, not fight a war against an enemy that had spent 6 months preparing for exactly this moment. Tommy Chen, now 19 and possessing security clearances that would have made intelligence agencies nervous, had been busy during the months of preparation. His quantum viruses were already spreading through the Council fleet's communication networks, lying dormant until activated. "Admiral," Tommy reported from his workstation, "I've got backdoor access to 30% of their ships. When you give the word, I can make their own systems turn against them." But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't technological, it was strategic. While the Council had spent 8 centuries becoming comfortable with absolute power, humans had spent that same time period learning to fight impossible odds and win. Dr. Vasquez, now directing the Global Defense Network from Luna Base, coordinated with resistance cells that had formed spontaneously across the galaxy. Earth's broadcasts hadn't just inspired other species, they had provided technical specifications for fighting Council technology. "Receiving transmissions from Vega System," Dr. Vasquez announced. "The Aquatic Alliance is ready to begin their operation." The plan that unfolded was beyond anything the Council had anticipated. Earth hadn't just prepared to defend itself, it had coordinated a galaxy-wide rebellion. As Thek Prime's fleet closed on Sol, simultaneous uprisings began on 17 different worlds. The first blow fell when the Threnody warriors, armed with crude weapons built using human-provided designs, seized control of their planet's quantum communication arrays. Within minutes, they were broadcasting their liberation to the galaxy, showing footage of Council overseers fleeing in panic. Thek Prime received the reports with growing alarm. The primitive species had somehow managed to coordinate resistance across impossible distances. It violated everything the Council understood about inferior civilizations. Impossible, Thek Prime clicked through his translator. How can primitives organize such coordinated action across the galaxy? The answer came from intercepted human transmissions. Earth had used the alien communication networks to spread not just information, but actual organizational techniques. Human concepts like guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, and distributed command structures were spreading through galactic civilization like wildfire. Colonel Santos, now commanding the 1st Human Space Marine Division, watched the Council fleet approach with grim satisfaction. Her forces were distributed throughout the asteroid belt, using the same guerrilla tactics that had served humanity throughout its violent history. "Remember," she broadcast to her scattered units, "they expect us to meet them in open battle like civilized species. Instead, we're going to hit them like pirates, terrorists, and insurgents. Make them afraid to advance, afraid to retreat, and afraid to stand still." The battle began at the edge of the solar system when seemingly empty asteroids suddenly revealed themselves as camouflaged weapon platforms. The Council's advanced sensors had been looking for technological signatures they recognized, not for human creativity disguised as space debris. The initial barrage caught 12 Council ships completely off guard. Human-designed quantum uncertainty bombs detonated throughout the fleet, creating pockets of space where alien technology simply stopped working, while human systems, built to function under adverse conditions, continued operating. Thek Prime watched in horror as some of his most advanced vessels began firing on each other, their targeting systems compromised by Tommy Chen's dormant viruses. The primitive species had turned the fleet's own sophistication against itself. But the greatest shock came when long-range scanners detected something unprecedented. Other alien species were approaching the battle zone. The Void Swimmers had abandoned their traditional neutrality and were bringing their bioships to support Earth. The machine prophets had launched their geometric vessels from the Andromeda galaxy's edge. "This is impossible," Thek Prime repeated, his confidence cracking. "How can inferior species coordinate across galactic distances?" The answer was broadcasting live to every receiver in the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood before the cameras in the Defiance's command center, her voice carrying across space to billions of oppressed beings. "To every species listening to this transmission, the time for submission is over. The Council's power depends on your fear and isolation. But today you see that even they can be defeated. Today you see that resistance is possible." On 1,000 worlds, beings who had accepted Council dominance for generations began to stir. In the hidden archives of conquered civilizations, ancient weapons were being uncovered. In the slave compounds of mining worlds, overseers were beginning to disappear. The Council fleet found itself fighting not just humanity, but a galaxy in revolt. Their sophisticated command structure, designed for managing compliant populations, proved completely inadequate for dealing with simultaneous crises across multiple sectors. Dr. Harrison's quantum uncertainty weapons were devastating the Council's tactical abilities. But the psychological warfare was even more effective. Every Council ship that fell was broadcast live to the galaxy, showing that the invincible rulers could be defeated. Thek Prime made a desperate decision. All ships target the primitive homeworld directly. Ignore the orbital defenses and civilian populations. Implement planetary sterilization protocols. But Tommy Chen was ready for exactly this response. The moment the sterilization order was transmitted, his viruses activated throughout the Council fleet. Weapon systems turned on their own ships. Navigation computers sent vessels into collision courses, and life support systems began failing across the entire armada. The most advanced military force in galactic history found itself crippled by its own technology, hacked and subverted by a species that had discovered computers less than a century ago. As Council ships began evacuating their crews in escape pods, Admiral Chen broadcast one final message to the galaxy. "The age of Council dominance is ending. To every species that dreams of freedom, Earth stands with you. To every world that has been enslaved, your liberation begins now. And to the Council itself, you are no longer welcome in our galaxy." The impossible had happened not once but twice. A primitive species had not only defeated the Council's military might, but had inspired a galactic revolution that would reshape the political structure of space itself. In the ruins of his flagship, Thek Prime composed what he knew would be his final report to the Council leadership. The message was simple but world-changing. The age of easy conquest was over. The galaxy had learned to fight back. Earth strikes back. The Council falls. The Galactic Council's governing chamber on Prime World had stood unchanged for 3,000 years, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 7 suns, while the most powerful beings in the galaxy made decisions that affected trillions of lives. Today, for the first time in millennia, chaos reigned in those sacred halls. Supreme Counselor Vrak Eternal paced frantically before the emergency assembly, his 4 arms gesturing wildly as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The mathematical impossibility was becoming undeniable reality. Primitive species everywhere were successfully rebelling against Council authority. 17 sectors in full revolt, reported military coordinator Zeph-9. The Threnodi have retaken their homeworld. The Crystalline Collective has seized control of 3 mining systems, and the Void Swimmers. Zeph-9 paused, his voice filled with disbelief. The Void Swimmers have declared the Council illegitimate and are offering military support to any species seeking independence. The chamber erupted in panicked clicking and electronic screeching as Council members from dozens of species tried to comprehend how their perfect order was collapsing. The primitive Earth species had done more than defeat their fleets. They had shattered the fundamental assumption that advanced civilizations were inherently superior to primitive ones. On Earth, President Morrison stood in the rebuilt White House Situation Room watching real-time reports from rebellions across the galaxy. The quantum communication arrays captured from the alien ships had given humanity a front-row seat to the collapse of galactic civilization's oldest power structure. "Ma'am," Admiral Chen reported from her flagship orbiting Earth, "we're receiving formal requests for military assistance from 43 different species. They want human advisors to help organize their resistance movements. Morrison smiled grimly. 6 months ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they were being asked to export revolution to the stars. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Dr. Harrison's team had developed quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across galactic distances. But more importantly, they had shared the technology freely with any species willing to fight for freedom. Tommy Chen, now recognized as Earth's premier expert on alien computer systems, had established the Galactic Resistance Network, a hidden communication system that allowed oppressed species to coordinate their activities while remaining invisible to Council. Surveillance. The beautiful thing about the Council's technology, Tommy explained to a gathering of world leaders, is that it's designed for control, not security. They never expected anyone to hack their systems because they never imagined anyone would be smart enough to try. The real genius of humanity's approach was psychological rather than technological. Earth had proven that the Council could be defeated, but more importantly, they had demonstrated techniques that any species could use regardless of their technological level. Colonel Santos, now commanding the 1st Galactic Liberation Corps, was training alien resistance fighters using tactics that had been developed in Earth's bloodiest conflicts. Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and asymmetric tactics were spreading through the galaxy like a virus of freedom. The Council fights like they govern, Santos explained to her mixed species training classes. They expect order, hierarchy, and predictable responses. But revolution is chaos, and chaos is humanity's natural element. The breakthrough moment came when the Machine Prophets, the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence civilization, made an unprecedented announcement. Their geometric ships had arrived in Sol System carrying not weapons but data, comprehensive records of every species the Council had exterminated over the past 3,000 years. The revelation was staggering. The Galactic Council hadn't just conquered civilizations. They had systematically eliminated any species that showed potential for rapid technological advancement. Earth had survived only because humanity's aggressive nature had been seen as a disadvantage rather than a threat. Dr. Vasquez, working with the Machine Prophet data cores, uncovered the most damning evidence yet. They have protocols for identifying dangerous species based on creativity, adaptability, and resistance to authority. Every species that developed faster than light travel independently was marked for elimination. The data was immediately broadcast across the galaxy through the resistance networks. The effect was explosive. Species that had submitted to Council, ruled to avoid extinction, discovered that submission itself was no guarantee of survival. The Council's long-term plan involved gradually reducing all non-Council species to manageable populations. Supreme Counselor Vrak Eternal convened an emergency war council as reports of new rebellions arrived hourly. The primitive species had not just defeated them militarily, they had exposed the Council's darkest secrets and turned the galaxy's moral opinion against them. "We must negotiate," suggested Economic Coordinator Flesh of Credit. "Perhaps offer the primitive species recognition as an independent civilization in exchange for ending their interference in Council affairs." The suggestion was met with outraged objections from the military leadership, but Vrak Eternal saw the wisdom in it. The alternative was watching their entire civilization collapse as more species joined the rebellion. But when the Council's peace overtures reached Earth, President Morrison's response was broadcast live to the entire galaxy. "The Galactic Council offers us recognition as an independent civilization in exchange for abandoning our allies and allowing the continued enslavement of countless species. Our answer is simple. There will be no peace while any sentient being remains under Council oppression. The age of galactic tyranny ends now." The message resonated across space, reaching species that had never dreamed of freedom. The Aquatic Alliance launched attacks on Council mining operations in their system. The Crystalline Collective began producing weapons using technology shared through the Resistance Network. Even the traditionally peaceful Meadow Speakers began sabotaging Council facilities on their agricultural worlds. The Council's response was predictably brutal. Orbital bombardments began targeting rebel worlds, but the effectiveness was limited by a crucial factor the Council had overlooked: Most of their advanced weapons required quantum computing systems that were vulnerable to human-designed uncertainty fields. Tommy Chen's greatest achievement was developing portable quantum disruptors that could be manufactured by any species with basic industrial capability. Council weapons platforms would arrive at rebel worlds only to find their targeting systems completely scrambled by devices built in improvised workshops. The war that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of massive fleet engagements between technological equals, it became a vast asymmetric conflict where primitive tactics and human ingenuity repeatedly outmaneuvered advanced alien technology. Admiral Chen found herself commanding not just human forces but a coalition fleet that included bioships, crystal vessels, machine intelligences, and dozens of other alien designs. The diversity that had once been the Council's strength in conquest became the rebellion's greatest tactical advantage. They trained for 3,000 years to fight civilizations like themselves, Chen observed during a strategy meeting with alien allies. They have no idea how to fight a galaxy that refuses to follow their rules. The end came not through a final battle but through a cascading collapse of authority. When the Council's core worlds found themselves cut off from their resource colonies by rebellion, their perfect technological civilization began to crumble from within. The quantum communication networks that had maintained Council unity across galactic distances became channels for human-inspired revolutionary propaganda. The artificial intelligences that managed Council infrastructure were hacked by techniques Tommy Chen shared freely with any species willing to learn. Most importantly, the Council's own member species began to question whether absolute power was worth the cost of constant rebellion. Several advanced civilizations formally withdrew from the Council, declaring neutrality in the galactic conflict. Vrak Eternal's final transmission to the galaxy was a simple acknowledgement of the impossible reality. The Galactic Council hereby dissolves its authority over non-member species. Individual systems are free to determine their own governance. The message was followed by the most remarkable sight in galactic history: Council ships across the galaxy simply powering down their weapons and withdrawing to their home systems, abandoning colonies and installations that had been maintained for centuries. Earth had done the unthinkable. A species that had only recently discovered fire had brought down the oldest and most powerful government in galactic history. But their greatest achievement wasn't military. It was proving that freedom was worth fighting for, regardless of the odds. Earth strikes back. A new galactic order 5 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, the galaxy was a very different place. Where once rigid hierarchies had enforced order through fear, a chaotic but vibrant network of independent civilizations now traded, fought, negotiated, and collaborated according to their own desires and interests. Admiral Sarah Chen, now in her 50s but looking older due to the stress of leading humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, stood on the observation deck of Starbase Liberty, humanity's first permanent installation outside the Sol system. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species docking and departing: Threnody warriors, crystalline merchants, machine profit geometries, and human vessels all coexisting in the controlled chaos of free commerce. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, joining Chen at the window. 5 years ago, none of these species were allowed to interact without Council permission. Now look at them. The transformation hadn't been easy. The collapse of galactic government had initially created as many problems as it solved. Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves without Council mediation. Resource disputes that had been settled by bureaucratic decree now required negotiation or force. Some regions of space had descended into warfare as old grievances resurfaced, but humanity had learned something valuable during their desperate fight for survival. Freedom was messy, violent and inefficient, but it was also creative, adaptable, and ultimately stronger than any imposed order. President Morrison, now serving her second term and widely regarded as the most influential human in galactic politics, had established the Terran Diplomatic Corps specifically to help other species navigate their newfound independence. The approach was uniquely human. Instead of trying to impose solutions, they taught techniques for finding solutions. "We're not trying to replace the Council," Morrison explained during a broadcast to the newly independent civilizations. "We're trying to make sure nothing like the Council ever happens again." That means teaching every species to stand up for themselves and their neighbors. The results had been remarkable. The Threnodi had re-established their warrior culture, but modified it with human concepts of proportional response and defensive warfare. The Crystalline Collective had formed trade partnerships with dozens of former enemies, using economic interdependence to replace political domination. Tommy Chen, now 24 and director of the Galactic Information Network, had created something unprecedented in cosmic history, a completely open communication system that no single entity could control or censor. Any species, no matter how primitive or advanced, could access the sum total of galactic knowledge and contribute their own discoveries. Information wants to be free, Tommy often said, unconsciously echoing ancient human philosophy. The Council's greatest crime wasn't conquest. It was hoarding knowledge that could have benefited everyone. The economic transformation had been even more dramatic than the political one. Without Council regulation, innovation exploded across the galaxy. Hybrid technologies combining the best features of different species. Approaches began appearing everywhere. Dr. Raj Patel's fusion of human manufacturing techniques with crystalline precision had revolutionized production across dozens of worlds. Dr. Sato's integration of human neural patterns with machine profit processing. Power had created artificial intelligences that were both logical and creative, but perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The galaxy had rediscovered something it had forgotten during millennia of Council rule: the value of diversity. Colonel Santos, now retired from military service and running the Galactic Self-Defense Academy, trained beings from across the galaxy in the human arts of asymmetric warfare and resistance organization. Her most popular course was titled, How to Fight Above Your Weight Class. Every species has unique strengths. Santos taught her mixed classes of former slaves and ex-Council enforcers. The Council's mistake was trying to make everyone the same. Our strength comes from being different and working together anyway. The former Council worlds had adapted to the new reality with varying degrees of success. Some had embraced the chaos and found new purposes as centers of learning and innovation. Others had retreated into isolation, unable to cope with a galaxy that no longer revolved around their authority. Supreme Counselor Vrak Eternal, stripped of his titles and living in exile on a remote world, had become an unlikely historian of his own civilization's downfall. His memoirs, published through the Galactic Information Network, provided insight into how absolute power had gradually corrupted even well-intentioned leaders. We told ourselves we were bringing order to chaos, Vrak wrote in his most quoted passage. But we had forgotten that chaos is where new possibilities are born. The primitive humans reminded us of something we had lost: the courage to face an uncertain future. The military situation had stabilized into what human strategists called armed peace, and without the Council's monopoly on advanced weapons, power had become more evenly distributed. Major conflicts were rare because no single civilization could dominate all the others. The machine prophets had evolved their geometric ships into mobile peacekeeping platforms, intervening in conflicts not to impose solutions but to ensure that disputes remained limited in scope. Their AI ethics, influenced by human concepts of justice and fairness, had become a model for other artificial intelligences. Dr. Harrison, now leading the Galactic Physics Consortium, had made breakthroughs in quantum mechanics that promised to revolutionize space travel and communication. But true to human philosophy, all discoveries were immediately shared with anyone interested in learning. Science belongs to everyone, Harrison stated during the annual Galactic Research Symposium. The Council treated knowledge like property to be hoarded. We treat it like seeds to be planted. The most unexpected development had been the emergence of hybrid civilizations. Young beings from different species, educated in the post-Council galaxy, were forming partnerships and communities that transcended traditional boundaries. On dozens of worlds, multi-species colonies were experimenting with new forms of government and social organization. Admiral Chen found herself serving not just as a military leader, but as an elder stateswoman, consulted by species across the galaxy when they faced difficult decisions. The role was exhausting but rewarding. Humanity had gone from fighting for survival to helping others find their own paths to freedom. "Admiral," came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to see Ambassador Ket Warrior, who remembers. the elderly Threnody leader who had become one of Earth's closest allies. The Void Swimmers are requesting human advisors for their expansion into the Magellanic Clouds. They want to ensure their exploration doesn't accidentally threaten any undiscovered civilizations. Chen smiled. The Void Swimmers' request was typical of the new galactic order. Species voluntarily asking for guidance to avoid repeating the Council's mistakes. It was messy, inefficient, and completely unlike the orderly conquest that had characterized the previous era. It was also unmistakably better. "Tell them we'll send a team," Chen replied, "and remind them that our advice is just that, advice. They're free to ignore it if they think they have a better way." As Chen watched ships from dozens of species navigate the busy space around the starbase, she reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful tyranny could be overthrown by ordinary beings who refused to surrender their freedom. But more importantly, they had proven that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to find their own way among the stars. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of galactic civilization, messy, chaotic, and free, had begun. In the depths of space, automated beacons continued broadcasting a simple message in 1,000 languages. To any species receiving this transmission, you are not alone. You are not powerless, and you are always welcome to join the community of free civilizations. The galaxy belongs to all of us. Earth had struck back against cosmic tyranny and won. Now the real work of building a better galaxy could begin.